I sat on the edge of my bed, the silence so loud it rang in my ears. The light from the hallway seeped under the door, just enough to see the stack of unopened envelopes on my dresser. One of them had a red stamp, past due. But not for me. It was my mother's. Again. I leaned back, letting my eyes rest on the ceiling. My mind wandered, backward and inward. I remembered birthdays, holidays, cookouts, moments where I stepped in quietly when something needed to be paid, fixed, handled. Like the time Mom got that threatening letter from the credit card company and cried in the kitchen. She didn't know I paid it off the next day. Never told her. What would have been the point? I used to think maybe she knew, that she just didn't know how to say thank you. But now I'm not sure. Maybe she didn't notice because she didn't want to, because it was easier to believe someone else handled it. Someone like her favorite son, Jacob, who never stuck around long enough to take out the trash. The checkbook sat open on my lap. I glanced down at the carbon copy of the last rent check, $2,200. Rent for an apartment I haven't set foot in since I was 18. I'd been writing these checks for almost 5 years. Quietly, automatically. And she never once asked, "Amelia, are you doing okay?" Not once. I rubbed my temples. There was a tremble in my fingers I couldn't quite shake. I thought about all the times I stopped by her place with groceries, how I fixed the leaky faucet while she talked on the phone with her friends, laughing like she hadn't a care in the world. Meanwhile, I was the one skipping lunch to cover her electric bill. And for what? To be the one kid who didn't get an iPad last Christmas, the one who didn't get a birthday dinner. Hell, I barely got a card. They say love is shown in actions. I believed that for a long time. Still do, on good days. But lately, it feels like I've been screaming in a room full of people who refuse to hear me. I closed the checkbook and slid it into the drawer. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat with old memories, flipping through them like worn pages in a book no one else had read. There was the time I helped Mom refinance her car loan. The time I picked up her prescriptions when she couldn't drive. The time I drove across town in the rain to unclog her sink. Always me, and always invisible. The next morning, I stood in the kitchen, watching the coffee brew. My eyes burned. I wasn't sure if it was from the lack of sleep or something else. I thought about the last family dinner. She had raised her glass to toast Jacob's new job. "My boy's finally making 6 figures," she beamed. I nodded, said nothing. She didn't even look my way. It wasn't about jealousy. I was proud of him. But I wasn't proud of how easily I was ignored. How expected I had become. The family mule. Reliable, quiet, never needing praise. I remembered sitting on the front steps after that dinner, still holding my coat, my car keys heavy in my hand. I stared at the house thinking, if I vanished tomorrow, would anyone notice? Probably not, at least not until the rent was late. Something cracked inside me that day. I don't think they saw it. I didn't cry. I didn't storm out. But inside, a wire snapped. And it's been humming in the back of my mind ever since. I used to think I was just being strong. That staying quiet, doing the right thing, made me good. But good doesn't mean visible. Good doesn't mean loved. So what does? Later that week, I stood in front of my mirror, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold in my hand. I looked into my own eyes, really looked. I saw someone tired, someone who had bent over backward again and again, hoping someone would notice. But I also saw someone ready to stop, ready to speak. I didn't have a speech prepared. I didn't have a plan, but I knew one thing. I couldn't keep playing this role, the one who gives and gets nothing in return. Then my phone buzzed. A text from my sister. "Hey, Mom said you might be able to help with her car insurance this month. It's like $350. No, how are you? No, thank you for everything you've done. Just another request, another expectation." I stared at the screen for a long time. My thumb hovered over the reply button, and I thought, I can't keep doing this. Not anymore. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the rent check. My fingers brushed over the ink, feeling the weight of it, as if it was the only thing holding me together right now. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the background, the clock ticking steadily, almost mockingly, as the reality of what I had been doing hit me once again. Paying rent for my mother, quietly, year after year. No one had ever asked. No one had ever noticed. I thought about all the times I'd given without a second thought, the times I'd sacrificed my own needs for the family, and now it seemed it had all piled up inside me like a pressure cooker waiting to explode. How much longer could I keep hiding these feelings? How long could I continue being the silent contributor, the one who always gave, always took on the responsibility, but never got the recognition? My stomach churned as I thought about it. I had done all of this for the love of my family, for the hope that they'd see me, appreciate me. But I was invisible to them. I had been invisible to them for so long. A flash of memory hit me, the time I spent hours putting together a family dinner for everyone. I slaved in the kitchen, making sure everything was perfect, only for them to walk in, sit down, eat, and then leave without even a thank you. The frustration of those moments bubbled up again. It always felt like I was doing things for others, but never the other way around. I gave, and yet, when it came time for someone to notice my sacrifices, I was met with silence. The thought crossed my mind then, I could stop. I could stop paying the rent. I could stop being the one who always covered for everyone else, who stepped in when no one else did. But would that make a difference? Would they even care? I felt a knot tighten in my chest. I had always been the one to step up, the one who did what needed to be done. But when did I become invisible in the process? I was still sitting there, lost in thought, when the sound of my mother's voice echoed from the living room. She was talking to my brother on the phone, laughing about something trivial. My heart sank. I couldn't help but feel like an outsider in my own home. The place where I had done so much, the place where I was supposed to feel safe and loved, had become a place where I just existed. I stood up suddenly, my chair scraping against the floor. I walked over to the counter and grabbed a pen. The check was still sitting there, waiting to be filled out. I hesitated. My hand hovered over the checkbook. I had always done this. Paid the rent, paid the bills, fixed the leaks, bought the groceries. It had become second nature to me. But now, it felt like a chain, holding me back. I wasn't just paying her rent. I was paying for the silence, for the years of giving without ever being seen. What had I been doing all this time? A sharp realization hit me. I had been giving everything, but for what? For a family that never once paused to thank me. For a mother who, despite all the help, never noticed how much I sacrificed. I clenched my jaw, my fingers pressing hard against the checkbook. No more. I couldn't keep doing this. I had to make a change. A rush of anger and hurt surged through me. I had always believed that love was enough, that giving was enough. But love without acknowledgement, without reciprocity, only led to resentment. I took a deep breath and slammed the checkbook closed. I couldn't make this decision alone anymore. It was time to confront my family. The next weekend, at the family gathering, I could feel the tension building inside me. I had rehearsed the words in my mind 100 times, but as soon as I saw my mother laughing with my siblings, that familiar anger boiled up again. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, the chair scraping against the floor like a battle cry. "Why is it always me?" I blurted out. The words came out before I could stop them. Why am I always the one who helps? Why do I give and never get anything back? Not even a thank you. The room went silent. My mother stopped talking. My siblings stared at me in shock. I could feel their eyes on me, the weight of their silence crushing me. "You've never even noticed, have you? How much I've done for you. How much I've sacrificed." My voice wavered, but I didn't care anymore. I was tired of being quiet. I was tired of being invisible. My mother didn't say anything. My brother cleared his throat awkwardly, but no one offered a word of support. The silence was deafening. And in that moment, I realized something even more painful. They still didn't see me, not really. I felt a wave of frustration rise up, but there was no victory in it, just a hollow emptiness. I turned away, feeling the tears well up in my eyes. It was pointless. I had poured my heart out, but nothing had changed. That night, I sat alone in my bedroom, staring at the wall. My phone buzzed. I picked it up, not even checking the name. "Hey, can you help with Mom's rent this month? She's a little short," the message read. I sighed, staring at the screen. My thumb hovered over the reply button, but this time, I didn't type anything. I had done enough. I couldn't keep doing this. Not anymore. I sat there for a long time, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders, but also a pang of fear. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally making a choice for myself. The evening was thick with silence as I sat across from my mother at the dinner table. The air felt heavy, almost suffocating, as if the distance between us had grown too vast to bridge. Her eyes flicked dismissively over me as she stirred her soup, not even noticing the way my hands tightened around my utensils. It was as if the space around us was a void, and I was stuck in it, unseen, unheard. Every word she uttered seemed to cut deeper, and I could feel the pressure building inside me. I had given so much to this family, more than I ever expected in return. And yet, here I was, asking for a sliver of recognition, a sliver of appreciation, and all I got was the cold indifference she had mastered so well. A single thought ran through my mind. How much longer could I keep playing this role? The dutiful daughter, the one who always stepped up, who always took care of things, even when no one asked. I thought of the sacrifices I'd made for her, for the family. How many times had I silently covered debts, paid bills, cleaned up messes, and yet no one noticed? They didn't even see the quiet toll it had taken on me. I glanced at the table, my eyes lingering on the food I had helped prepare, and then back at my mother. She didn't even look at me. My chest tightened. I could feel my anger rising, but it was laced with something else too. Dread. Dread that speaking up would only make things worse, that my frustration would only be dismissed, just like it had always been. "Amelia, why do you look so upset?" my mother finally asked, not looking up from her bowl. Her tone was casual, almost dismissive. "It's just dinner. Stop being so sensitive." I froze. Her words hit harder than I expected. My hands trembled slightly, but I clenched them into fists under the table. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her everything I had been holding back for so long, but instead, I swallowed the words, letting them sit in my throat like poison. It wasn't the first time she had brushed me off. It wasn't the first time my emotional needs had been treated as an afterthought, a nuisance. It wasn't the first time my quiet sacrifices were met with her sarcasm and eye rolls, but for some reason, this time, it felt different. I could feel the walls closing in on me, the suffocating pressure of years of invisible work, the unfairness of it all. I took a deep breath, and then, finally, I spoke. "I just want some recognition, Mom. I'm not asking for much, just to be seen." Her reaction was swift, cutting through the air like a knife. "Recognition?" she scoffed, rolling her eyes. "What do you want, Amelia? A medal? You've always been so dramatic about everything. This is just who we are as a family. Get over it." I could feel the sting of her words, but I didn't back down. "No, I'm done getting over it," I said, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and hurt. "I've always been the one who helps. But it's never enough for you." The silence that followed felt like an eternity. My siblings exchanged uneasy glances, but no one spoke up. Not even a word of support, not even a look of understanding. It was as if I was invisible to them, too. "I'm not asking for your help, Amelia," my mother said, her tone icy. "I'm just trying to make dinner here. If you don't like it, maybe you should leave." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She wasn't even trying to understand. She was shutting me down, just like she always had. In that moment, I felt smaller than ever. The years of silent giving, the emotional weight of always being the one to clean up the messes, the one to hold the family together. It was all coming crashing down on me. I stood up abruptly, pushing my chair back so hard it scraped the floor. "You know what? I'm done." My mother barely looked up. "Whatever." I stormed out of the room, the anger inside me bubbling over. It wasn't just frustration anymore. It was a raw, searing need for change. I had been silent for so long, and now it was time for me to finally stand up for myself. I went to my room, slamming the door behind me. My breath came in short, shallow bursts as I tried to collect my thoughts. The tears that I had been holding back finally fell, but there was no release, no catharsis in them. I had been invisible for so long. But now I had to make a choice. I couldn't let this continue. I couldn't keep giving without receiving. I sat down at my desk, pulling out a piece of paper. I wrote a list in my mind, mentally ticking off all the times I'd been dismissed, all the times I'd been ignored. And then it hit me. This wasn't just about paying the bills, or helping with groceries, or fixing things around the house. It was about respect. It was about finally saying that I mattered too. I was done being the silent contributor. Later that evening, when dinner finally came to an end, my mother asked me to cover yet another expense. She looked at me with those same expectant eyes, as if I was just going to nod and hand over the money. But this time, I didn't. I sat there, my hands resting on the table, feeling the coldness of the situation. "No," I said, my voice quiet but firm. She froze mid-sentence, her eyes widening in disbelief. The room seemed to pause around us, the family watching, waiting for the next move. For a moment, no one spoke. My mother's face fell, her mouth opening as if to say something, but the words never came, and for the first time in years, I felt like I had finally drawn a line in the sand. Her stunned silence was the beginning of something new. But as the dinner conversation awkwardly resumed, I couldn't help but wonder if this small act of defiance would cost me more than I was willing to pay. Would my mother be furious? Would my siblings turn against me? I didn't know. But I had made my decision. The decision to confront my mother had been building for weeks, but now, as I stood in front of her house, it felt like the weight of years was pressing down on me, the kind of weight that bends you but doesn't break you. Yet, I was done pretending. I was done letting things slide. I had let enough slide, all my life. And for what? For her. For them. This was the moment I had been waiting for. But it was also the most terrifying. The moment when everything would finally come to a head. I walked toward the front door with my mind racing, rehearsing the words in my head. I felt my heart thudding in my chest. What if this didn't go how I imagined it? What if I said too much? What if they rejected me for it? No matter what, I had to go through with it. I couldn't keep going like this. Not anymore. The door opened before I could knock. My mother stood there, a forced smile on her face. "Amelia, what a surprise." "Come on in." I stepped past her, trying not to let my emotions show. She didn't know what was coming, but I did. I had thought about this conversation 1,000 times, and now it was finally happening. There would be no turning back. I didn't waste time with small talk. "Mom, we need to talk," I said, my voice calm but firm. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she gestured for me to sit. "About what, sweetheart?" "I'm tired of this," I started, my words coming out faster than I expected. "I'm tired of always being the one who sacrifices. I'm tired of giving and giving without any appreciation. I've been the one who's helped you, who's paid bills, who's kept this family running, and yet you always treat me like I don't matter." Her face tightened. She opened her mouth to respond, but I wasn't done yet. "And I'm not the only one. You treat my siblings like they can do no wrong, and you never ask for anything from them. But I'm always the one who has to step up, the one who gets ignored. I'm done." The air in the room was thick with tension. She stared at me, her lips pressed into a thin line. "You're being selfish, Amelia," she said, her voice cold. "You always think I don't appreciate you. Maybe if you didn't make everything about you, you'd see how much I do appreciate you." I shook my head, my fists clenching in my lap. "No, no more. I'm not your doormat anymore. You can't just walk all over me and expect me to keep quiet. I'm not invisible." Her eyes flashed with anger. "You're making a mountain out of a molehill. This is what I get for trying to do everything for you. You're ungrateful, and you're making me feel like a bad mother." I stood up, feeling the familiar rush of frustration. "You don't get to turn this around on me. You've been neglecting me emotionally for years. I've been your silent supporter. How many times have I paid for things without asking for anything in return? How many times have I stepped in when no one else did? And yet I'm the one who's being selfish. I could feel my heart racing now, my voice getting louder. I'm not asking for your gratitude. I'm asking for respect. I'm asking to be seen. My mother's face turned red with anger. She slammed her fist onto the table, the noise making me jump. You want respect? Then stop acting like you're the only one with problems. Everyone's got issues, Amelia. Don't you dare act like you've carried this family alone. But I wasn't backing down. I'm not the only one with problems, but I'm the only one who's been carrying everything, and it's killing me. I've been doing this alone, while you keep playing the martyr. You can't keep ignoring me just because I'm strong enough to hold it together. The silence between us stretched, thick and heavy. I could feel the weight of the words I'd just said, and it was both a relief and a burden. I had finally said it, but now what? What would happen next? The silence was broken by my younger brother's voice. Mom, I don't think Amelia's wrong here. The words hung in the air like an electric current. I turned to see him standing there, his arms crossed, eyes locked on our mother. Her expression faltered. What? You too? I'm just saying, he continued. Amelia's right. You've been treating us all differently. We're not blind. I stared at him, a mixture of shock and gratitude flooding my chest. Of all people, I hadn't expected him to speak up. But there he was, finally seeing it, finally hearing me. For a moment, there was a quiet pause, as if the world was holding its breath. My mother was visibly shaken. Her gaze flickered between me and my brother, and the weight of the situation finally seemed to hit her. But she quickly regained her composure, masking her vulnerability with a defensive sneer. You think this is about fairness? She scoffed. It's not. This is about you all trying to make me feel guilty for everything I've done for you. But I wasn't having it anymore. You don't get to guilt trip me anymore, Mom. I've been silent for too long. I've been doing this for you, for us, without ever asking for anything in return. And I'm done. I'm done being the one who always gives. Her eyes narrowed as the words landed. You think you're the only one who's been trying? You're making this about you, when it's never been about you. I stepped closer to her. No, Mom, I'm making it about all of us. But you've never seen it. You've never seen how much I've given because you've always been too busy expecting me to do more. The room was still, the air heavy with what had been said. I wasn't sure how much of what I said had sunk in. But as I stood there, watching the moment hang in the balance, I realized something. This wasn't just a confrontation. This was the beginning of a change. I was finally standing up for myself, and maybe, just maybe, this was the first step toward healing. Amelia, I don't know what you want from me, my mother whispered, her voice small but steady. But I'm sorry. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was something. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I might finally be seen. The phone call came later that night, just as I was sinking into the couch, hoping for a few minutes of peace. My mother's voice cut through the air, sharp and filled with bitterness. You've ruined this family, Amelia. You think this is about your feelings? You're being selfish. You've broken us. Her words hit like a slap. I had expected anger, but not this. Not the cold, cutting accusations. Not the overwhelming sense of betrayal. And yet, it was the reality I was facing. My heart sank as I realized this wasn't just a disagreement, it was a full-on rejection. I had stood up for myself, and now I was the enemy. As I stood in the middle of the living room, my hands shaking, the cold emptiness of the situation washed over me. I couldn't help but wonder if I had made a mistake. Was it worth it? Was all of this truly necessary? I wanted to scream, to let it all out, but the silence in the house was suffocating. Doubt began to creep in, and with it, guilt. Did I really ruin everything? I had been so certain, so strong in my decision, but now everything felt like it was slipping through my fingers. My mind kept racing. The weight of the conflict, the words, the consequences, it was all too much. As the evening wore on, the tension between my family and me grew. The phone call had been just the beginning. The next day, my siblings barely acknowledged me. Their silence was deafening. I had expected some form of support, but instead, I felt like I was an outsider in my own family. Then came the whispers. At work, I could feel the eyes on me, the hushed voices behind my back. My mother and siblings had been spreading the story of my betrayal, casting me as the villain in their narrative. They painted me as a selfish daughter, ungrateful, and unable to understand the family dynamic. I couldn't escape it. At the office, people looked at me differently. There were no overt comments, but I could see the way they shifted when I entered the room. The once familiar faces seemed unfamiliar, their glances full of judgment. I tried to brush it off, but the humiliation was eating at me. It wasn't just about the family anymore. It was about my reputation, my livelihood, my sense of self. I had fought for what I believed in, but now I was paying the price in ways I hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just about the rejection from my family anymore. It was the shame that followed me everywhere. Every time I walked into work, I could feel the weight of their whispers following me like a shadow. My coworkers, once friendly, once supportive, now looked at me like a different person. I wasn't just the daughter speaking up for herself. I was the daughter who had torn the family apart. It was in the middle of all of this that I felt it, the emotional toll. I was exhausted, physically and mentally drained. My mind felt like it was constantly buzzing, overwhelmed with the drama, the rejection, the guilt, and the sense of loss. One night, after a particularly long day of walking around in a daze, I found myself sitting with a close friend, spilling everything I had been holding in. I hadn't realized how badly I needed to let it out until I did. "You're carrying too much," she said gently, her voice soothing. "You need to let it go. You need help, Amelia." I couldn't help it. I broke down. The tears, the frustration, the hopelessness, it all came pouring out in a wave I couldn't stop. My friend just sat there, quiet, letting me cry, and for the first time in days, I didn't feel so alone. The next day, I made a decision. I couldn't keep holding everything in. It wasn't healthy, and it was only pushing me closer to the edge. I called a therapist and scheduled my first appointment. It was scary, it was uncomfortable, but it was a step towards healing. I wasn't sure what the future would hold, but I knew I couldn't do this alone. I couldn't continue to let this conflict consume me. And so, I took that first step. A few days later, I made another decision. It was time to confront my family again. I wanted to make it clear to them that I wasn't going to let this continue. I wanted them to know that I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for a healthier relationship with them. I invited them over, one last chance to make things right. My mother, my siblings, all of them. I wasn't sure what would happen, but I had to try. When they arrived, the tension was palpable. Everyone was walking on eggshells. I stood in front of them, feeling my heart race, but I had made my decision. I wasn't going to let them off the hook. "This needs to change," I said, my voice steady. "I can't keep living like this. I've been the one holding everything together, and I'm tired of it. If we're going to have a relationship, it has to be different. I won't be the only one putting in the effort anymore." The room was silent. My mother's eyes were narrowed, her lips pressed tight. My siblings exchanged looks, their expressions unreadable. I could feel the weight of their judgment, but I didn't back down. "If we can't change," I continued, the words heavy on my tongue, "I'm done." I waited for a response, but none came. The silence was deafening, and for a moment I wasn't sure if I had gone too far. But I had said what needed to be said. I had drawn the line. What would happen now? Would they change? Would they see me? Would they finally hear me? The silence lingered in the air, thick and heavy, as I stood there, my heart pounding in my chest. The room was already full when I walked in. My mother sat straight-backed on the far side of the living room, arms crossed. My siblings were scattered, some leaning against walls, some perched awkwardly on chairs like they couldn't decide if they wanted to be there. No one looked up when I entered, but everyone felt me arrive. The air was thick, too quiet. It wasn't just a gathering, it was a showdown, and we all knew it. I didn't sit. I walked to the center of the room and stood, pulling a folded stack of notes from my bag. My hands trembled just slightly, but I didn't let them see it. "I'm not here to fight," I started, voice steady, even. "I'm here to lay out the truth, because clearly, no one else will." I began with dates, Numbers, receipts. On this day, I paid Mom's electric bill. That same week, she bought Jared a new laptop. I held up the screenshots. Last Thanksgiving, she told everyone I couldn't make it because of work. I was never invited. My mother tried to wave me off. This is ridiculous. I cut her off, calmly but firmly. No, you don't get to rewrite it this time. I went on, listing every instance of favoritism, every memory of being excluded, undermined, used. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I stated the facts. It was the first time I'd ever spoken that clearly in front of them. No sugarcoating, no apology in my tone. When I pulled out the note from my college tuition payment, a check I'd written when Mom claimed she couldn't afford groceries, I felt the shift in the room. No one breathed. You said you couldn't help me with rent, I said to her directly. But you gave Brianna a down payment for her car. My voice caught, just for a second. I was 22, Mom, living on peanut butter, and you lied. Vivian didn't stay quiet after that. You're exaggerating everything, twisting things. You always were dramatic. You say that because it's easier than hearing the truth. You think money makes you superior? I think silence made me sick. Then came the storm, words flying, accusations. Brianna chiming in with some half-hearted defense about Mom doing her best. Jared shaking his head. The noise built until it felt like the walls were rattling. At one point, a coaster went flying from the coffee table, hitting the floor with a loud clack. But I didn't flinch. I let them speak. Then I looked at my mother and asked quietly, "Do you ever see me as a person? Or just a bank account?" The room froze. No one had an answer. I took a breath, let the silence hang. "You remember my 6th birthday?" I said, voice low. "You forgot. Took Brianna shopping instead. I waited by the door in my dress until bedtime." My mother's eyes narrowed, but she didn't speak. She didn't have to. That memory had been mine to carry for too long. "I'm done," I said. "I'm done being invisible. I'm done being useful and ignored. I won't give you money anymore. I won't show up just to be blamed. And I will walk away for good if this continues." The room had never felt so still. Brianna's mouth opened, then closed again. Jared looked down at his shoes. No one moved. I turned toward the door. My legs were heavy, but I kept walking. I felt every step in my spine. Years of silence, of swallowing pain, unraveling with each footfall. A clock ticked somewhere behind me. No one followed. Then, just as my hand touched the doorknob, my mother's voice broke the silence. "Jeremy." I froze. I hadn't heard that name in years. And hearing it now, like that, sent a chill down my back. She wasn't talking to me. She was warning me, a new betrayal, one I hadn't seen coming. I didn't turn around, but I knew in that moment the real war was just beginning. The crisp morning air bit at my skin as I stepped into the cool shadows of the forest. A faint light lingered on the horizon, the first rays of the sun barely visible through the dense trees. It was the kind of dawn that promised a new day, but also carried a heaviness that settled in my chest. I was here, in this unfamiliar place, with only my thoughts and the words of my mentor guiding me. My mentor's cryptic message echoed in my mind. "Step forward, Amelia. The journey will change everything, but only if you face it." For so long, I had hidden behind my walls, my safe little world where everything made sense. Now, everything was uncertain. The trees stretched ahead, their branches gnarled and reaching, much like the unknown that I was about to walk into. But fear tugged at me. Would I be able to handle what lay ahead? What was I really seeking here? I walked deeper into the forest, each step taking me farther from what I knew. Every rustle of leaves seemed louder, every crack of a twig beneath my feet amplified in the silence. I turned back once, catching a glimpse of the path I had left behind. The safety of it seemed so far away now, just out of reach. But as I continued, I couldn't help but notice that my legs moved without hesitation. Suddenly, a soft voice from behind startled me. My mentor had appeared, his face shadowed by the trees but still visible, his presence grounding me in the wild unknown. "You're here," he said, his tone both calming and unsettling. "Now the real journey begins." His words, once reassuring, now carried an edge I hadn't anticipated. My mentor, the one who had always seemed so sure of his path, seemed distant now. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, like there was more to this journey than I had been told. "I don't know if I'm ready," I admitted, my voice catching in the sudden breeze. "You've been ready all along," he replied, though his eyes didn't meet mine. His words felt distant, detached, as though they weren't meant for me at all. Something in me tightened. We walked for hours, deeper into the forest, until the trees opened up to a small clearing. The sunlight finally broke through the canopy, spilling across the ground in broken patches. There, I stopped, catching my breath. This was it. The moment where everything could change. But then, I saw something I hadn't expected. My mentor's eyes were no longer focused on me. They were fixed on something in the distance, something hidden by the trees. A flicker of unease crept through me. "I've brought you here to face your truth," he said slowly, his voice lowering. "But the truth might not be what you think." Before I could respond, his demeanor shifted. The reassuring figure I had once trusted seemed distant, cold, a coldness I couldn't place. And then, with a heavy sigh, he continued. "I've never told you everything about this journey, Amelia. And now, it's too late." My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" My voice was barely above a whisper. The forest around me seemed to grow still, holding its breath. My mentor's words came slowly, each one cutting deeper than the last. "I wasn't just guiding you. I've been leading you to something more, personal, something you're not yet ready to understand. The truth about this journey, Amelia, is that it's never been about you. It's always been about me." I felt a rush of shock and disbelief. The air around me felt thin, suffocating. The person I had trusted, who had been my guide, had a hidden agenda. And it was in this moment, this very moment, that everything I thought I knew unraveled. "You've been using me?" The words left my mouth before I could stop them. The realization hit me hard, like a punch to the gut. I took a step back, my body instinctively moving away from him. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at me as if I should already know the truth. "Everything you've done so far, every step you've taken, has been a part of my plan. I needed you to trust me. I needed you to be the one who found your strength, your purpose. But all along, it was about using you to get to something bigger, something you'll never understand." My mind raced. Every moment of clarity, every lesson, every shared memory, it had all been a facade, a calculated step in a much larger game. I could feel my trust shattering like glass, but there was something deeper, something that whispered I wasn't done yet. I turned away, the urge to run overwhelming, but something inside me, some core of defiance, made me stop. I wasn't going to let him win. Not now, not after everything. I faced him one last time. "You can keep your secrets," I said, my voice firm. "But I'm not your pawn. I'm not here for your game. I'm here to find myself." For a moment, we stared at each other in silence. His eyes were cold, calculating, but I wasn't afraid, not anymore. I turned and began to walk away, each step breaking the chains of manipulation that had bound me. The weight of his words still hung in the air, but I could feel something shift within me. I wasn't just walking away from him, I was walking into my own truth. The forest opened up before me, a symbol of everything that lay ahead. The unknown wasn't something to fear anymore. It was something to embrace. I was ready. In the distance, a figure stood at the edge of the clearing, watching. I could barely make out the shape, but I knew it was someone new, someone who was about to become a part of my journey. I took a deep breath, ready for whatever came next. I stood in the doorway of the house that had once been my entire world. The house was quieter now, the old walls holding echoes of memories, some painful, some warm. The air was thick with the weight of everything that had happened. I hadn't expected to return, not like this, not after everything that had passed between us. The sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting a soft glow across the room. It almost felt like nothing had changed. But I had. I had changed more than I could have imagined in the months since the confrontation with my mother, the betrayal, and the painful truth I'd learned about myself and my family. I was no longer the same person who had walked out of this place, uncertain and broken. I stood there for a long while, the silence stretching out around me. I thought about how far I'd come, the emotional battles I'd fought, the truths I'd faced, the relationships I had tried to rebuild. It wasn't easy, but I wasn't going to let the past define me anymore. I had learned to stand up for myself, to speak my truth, no matter how uncomfortable or painful it was. And it had cost me. The lessons from the journey still felt fresh, though the wounds had begun to heal. I thought about all the sacrifices I had made for my family, the times I'd been overlooked, the way I had silently shouldered their burdens. There were moments of regret, sure, but there was also a sense of pride. I had done what was right for me, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. I stepped into the living room, my heart pounding, but this time it wasn't out of fear. It was anticipation. It was a feeling of closure. The same room where I had sat so many times before, feeling small, overlooked, and unimportant, now felt different. This time, I wasn't here to seek approval or to beg for love. I was here to face the past head-on, to confront it with a clarity I had never had before. My mother was sitting in her chair, just like she always had. Her presence still carried that weight, that authority. But this time, I wasn't afraid of it. I wasn't the daughter who had to constantly prove herself. I was the woman who had learned to value her own voice. "Amelia," my mother said, her voice flat. "I didn't expect you to come back here." "I didn't expect it either," I replied, my tone steady. "But I have something to say." Her eyes flickered for a moment, then returned to their usual guarded expression. "I thought we were past all this." "No, we're not," I said, my heart hammering in my chest. "Because we never really talked about it. Not the way it matters, not the way it needs to be talked about." My mother shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. The tension in the room was palpable, but I wasn't backing down. "I know about everything," I continued, feeling the words surge up from a deep place inside me. "I know about the lies, the manipulation, the way you used me, and I'm done pretending it didn't happen. I'm done pretending I don't deserve more than what you've given me." Her face hardened, her lips pressing together into a thin line. "You're making a mountain out of a molehill. This is all in your head, Amelia." "No, it's not," I shot back, my voice cutting through the air. "It's not in my head. You've made me feel invisible my entire life, and I've spent so much time trying to earn your love, to get your approval. But I don't need it anymore." The words hung in the air like a bomb, and for a long moment, neither of us said anything. Her silence spoke louder than anything else. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't about her. This wasn't about trying to fix what was broken. This was about me reclaiming myself. "Amelia, I never meant to hurt you," she said, but there was no real sincerity in her voice. "You've always been too sensitive, too dramatic." I felt a flash of anger rise within me, but I suppressed it, grounding myself in the truth I had finally accepted. "Maybe it's not about me being sensitive. Maybe it's about you never seeing me for who I am, for what I needed. All these years, I gave everything to you. And I got nothing in return." The tears that had once been trapped inside me were now dry. I was beyond that. "I'm not asking for anything anymore. I'm just telling you the truth. I'm done being invisible." Her eyes narrowed. "So, what now, Amelia? You're just going to walk away from your family?" "Yes," I said, my voice firm. "I'm walking away from the person I've been for you. And I'm walking towards the person I want to be for me." She didn't speak, her eyes flashing with something I couldn't quite read. Was it regret? Shame? Anger? I didn't know, and it didn't matter anymore. I turned to leave, but just as I reached the door, my mother called out my name. "Amelia!" I paused, not looking back. "I've always loved you," she said, her voice softer now. "I just didn't know how to show it." I didn't answer. It wasn't the apology I had hoped for, nor the closure I had wanted, but it was something. It was enough. As I stepped out into the yard, The sun had started to dip below the horizon, casting the world in a warm, golden light. The air smelled fresh and clean, and for the first time in years, I felt at peace. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I was finally free. Free from the chains of the past, free from the family that had kept me bound in guilt and shame. I took a deep breath, the weight of everything I had carried lifting off my shoulders. A new chapter was beginning, and this time, it was my story to write.